Hi, I'm Mary Livingston, oldest of the clan.
Hi, I'm Margaret Livingston, second oldest.
I'm Walter III, oldest male.
I'm Edward. And then after me comes Joseph, who's our favorite and our big younger brother. And then there's Marlene, our baby sister, who lives in Killeen, Texas.
And
we're
all
the
Livingstons. Mom and Dad, there is a lot to say, and we'll probably through the discussion intertwine the answer about who Mom and Dad are and how they influenced our lives and they influenced the community here in West Philadelphia as well as the city of Philadelphia itself, with Dad being an architect. But Dad was an architect. They had 6 children. 3 of us were born at 57th Street. As the family continued to grow, they realized they needed more room because it was just a 1-bedroom duplex. And it was getting more and more difficult for the 3 of us to not hurt each other in the teeny little apartment. But no, we actually all got along. But they realized that they needed more room. So they found their first home here on Locust Street. And Eddie was born in that house. Eddie, and I think it was just Eddie. And after purchasing that house and the family continued to grow, they purchased a second home, a 3-story home on Locust Street, which we now refer to as the family house. Eddie refers to it as headquarters. And it still remains very much the family home. And then they purchased a home across the street, which is where Margaret lives.
Right.
Eddie is in the first house that we moved in on Locust Street, and Walter's son lives in the 4th home that they purchased here on Locust Street.
Yeah. And if I could interject, they were very strategic as far as where they picked the house, their very first house on Locust Street. They wanted a house close to a school so that we could walk to school and come home and our mom could be involved with our education at the school. And that was one of the main reasons why they picked Locust Street. And when we moved here in the 50s, we were the second Black family to move in on Locust Street. So, and from that, my mom became very involved with the Henry C. Lee School with all of us. So that I definitely remember as well. There was a friend, his name was James East, and my mom was living at the YMCA. She had just moved from New York to Philadelphia, and she didn't really know anyone other than a close friend, James East. So James East also knew my dad, and he said, I would like you to meet this wonderful young lady. And once they met, it was sparks, because I believe 3 months later, they got engaged. 3 months after that, they were married. And 3 months after that,
I was conceived.
You were in the belly. So as soon as my dad met our mom, he knew she was the one.
And that was a blind date.
And that was a blind date.
Oh, one more correction. When Mom was living in New York, and then she moved here, she stayed at the Father Divine's house.
Okay, the Father Divine's and at the Y.
And the Y.
Yes, and the Y.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I do recall my father saying that his father wanted him to follow in the field of law, where his dad started out. But his dad also had a knack for engineering, and he ended up getting an engineering degree and a law degree. And that's our grandfather,
Walter
Sr. Our father started out at Cheyney University, or it was Central High School, after Central High School, and he took up industrial arts. Following his stint at Cheyney, And my understanding is that he left Cheyney slightly early because of the war cause.
Right.
So he went off to the military, and after his time in the military, he went to the University of Penn and studied architecture and city planning. And from there, he moved on to bigger and better things, including the redevelopment authority at some point, where he put in about 20 years, as he also studied and developed his architecture firms that he worked with.
No, in fact, when he got his degree in city planning, now let me just say, we support University of Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
However, he still lived during the times when things were not, when African Americans were not truly accepted with getting their education. So he got his master's in city planning, but they never acknowledged that he got his master's. So I remember, I lived in Atlanta for 20 years, and when I came back home, Dad used to scare me driving back and forth to work, because he always said he was going to work, and when he stopped working, that would be the day that he would die. And I would get so angry at him for saying that. But the point of that was that he wanted to continue to work. And I remember him opening the mail one day, and it was a letter from the University of Penn with his degree, apologizing for not giving it to him when he deserved to get his degree. So I remember how happy. It was like a bittersweet kind of response from him.
And it has something to do with the fact that he left Cheyney slightly early, and not having a full 4 years at Cheyney.
Right.
Somehow that affected Penn's decision, or gave him a reason
not to give it to him. Right.
One or the other.
Yeah.
For the most part, yeah, he worked until he was 89.
89 years old.
86.
86.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because he passed at 89.
Yeah.
But actually, in 86, when he stopped working, that's when his health started going down.
Yep. Self-fulfilling prophecy.
Mm-hmm.
Besides Zion Baptist Church, there's also the Triumph Baptist Church. There's also the Progress Plaza.
Right.
Edison. Well, his firm designed Edison High School.
Right. And I guess my favorite would be Edison High School. As a 35-year educator, many people, whenever I would talk to them when I was working, always said how beautiful that Edison High School was. So I was always so proud to say, yeah, my dad designed that school. So that was my favorite. Yeah.
I think for me it was Huey Elementary at 52nd Street, right in the neighborhood.
52nd and Pine. Mm-hmm.
My favorite was the dining hall at Cheyney.
Oh yeah, that's another one.
We were all went to school, 3 of us.
Yeah.
To school, and my mother graduated from Cheyney.
Yeah.
After we were grown, but at Cheyney we lived on campus, and we got to eat in the dining hall that he designed.
Right.
Share one project that I have to say that I am proud that he did, which was designing the Clef Club.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and it was beautifully designed then, and it still aesthetically looks beautiful, and was designed so that the sound, and I don't know the correct term for it, but that when
the
acoustics, work very well for the artist. And I thought it was pretty cool that Mom went back to school to get her degree when she was in her 50s and going to Cheyney.
While her children were there.
Yeah.
And she lived on campus one semester. My dad would have to go and visit her up on campus. She was the RN of one of the dorms, and she lived on campus. Yeah.
I have to add, one day I was sitting in class, and she walked into the classroom and just held up a brown bag to the professor, and she pointed at me, and she walked into the classroom and handed me a sandwich in a brown bag, and I was so embarrassed because it was only the girls that snickered, you know.
Yes, she
Harris.
She was great on a typewriter, and she had secretarial skills. And when they opened up the firm on Parish Avenue,
Parish Street, in North Philadelphia. She worked there for a period of time with them, and that was the only time I think that she got involved with the business. Right. Other than that, she was basically a mother at home taking care of us.
6 kids,
6 children. Yeah.
I used to work for the Livingston Rosenwinkel firm.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's say, for instance, there's the Edison High School.
Mm-hmm.
It was fun because if there was extra space, no problem. Just label it storage or label it closet. But and then also we worked on the Strawberry Mansion Plaza, or I think it was called Strawberry Manor, and Penn Memorial Baptist Church. There were so many projects that we worked on as Livingston Rosenwinkel.
Yeah.
For 20 years, and I love telling the story when he was with the Redevelopment Authority. They met with the faculty or the president at that time of Penn, because Penn wanted to uproot and move. And while he was involved with the Redevelopment Authority, he talked them, along with the others, into Penn staying there. And I even gave that story to the newest president, President McGill, that's at Penn now. And she was aware of that story when I mentioned how my dad was involved in making sure Penn stayed in this area, because they were going to uproot to, I believe, to Valley Forge.
Because he was a city planner. And I remember how disadvantaged South Street was. South Street at one time was just a corridor of homes. What were they called? Project homes. All right. A lot of poor people lived on South Street. 16 years old, he and I are in the car together, and he's doing some business on South Street. And on our way home, he's sharing with me how they're going to redevelop South Street. And I'm arguing with him, how are they going to do that? And then you look at South Street today, it's completely different. But I remember how he and I argued. I'm going to tell my dad, the city planner, that they can't do anything with South Street. So it's just a nice little story that I always remember about. But I think it's also important that we talk about his involvement with the Boy Scouts.
Right. Okay. Walter and Eddie.
Well, we, Walt, Ed, Joe were all Boy Scouts. And that filtered its way down to our children. I never made Eagle. None of his sons made Eagle, but his grandsons did. He's got 3 Eagle Scout grandsons.
And one.
Great.
Yeah, Victor's
are great.
Great.
So several Eagle Scout grandsons and a great grandson, Eagle Scout. We all went to the same church that we grew up walking to at 51st and Spruce, and that too I think is part of University City. Holy Apostles and the Mediators,
and that's where your scouting was.
That's where our
116.
Right. That's where our scouting program was. And I very clearly remember that our scoutmaster was blind, and so he stood out quite a bit. And I do know that my dad was so adamant about being involved with scouting because when he was younger, he said he couldn't get involved, at least not at 18th and Van Pelt, because they just didn't have programs like that in that area. But he was adamant about his sons being involved with scouting. He was adamant about himself staying involved. So he worked as a board member for the Cradle of Liberty Council, as well as on a national board. And every year we can all recall going away to, it seemed to be
Piedmont, New Mexico.
Well,
we would go.
Yeah, we went to Philmont.
Philmont, yeah. He would pile us all in the car.
Station wagon.
Station wagon.
5 of us in the station wagon.
Driving across country.
Then it was part of Colorado.
Yeah.
But beyond that, every year he seemed to put us in the car and we would go to national or regional conferences.
Right.
And quite often it was at Atlantic City, because I can remember we had the beach to ourselves the time of year that they were held. But he became a member of the Silver Beaver. And that meant he went away for a week or two and with the full Boy Scout uniform and did training out in the woods with other scouts. But he did stay active with scouting on a board level while his sons and grandsons were active as scouts. Zion Baptist Church, I think, is going through a 50-year anniversary.
Right.
And I think there was some effort to try and put a historical marker on it. And they came to the family looking for information on it, but we were so very young at the time that we don't recall too much about it, other than that we remember that it was one of his designs and one of those projects that really set his name off.
It did.
And opened up a lot of doors for him.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think because of the fact that at the time Leon Sullivan was the pastor at that church, and Leon Sullivan and my dad formed a relationship that even caused the two of them to go to Africa as OIC was attempting to branch out and broaden the efforts that it had in not only Philadelphia, but now globally, across seas, to do things in the, I'm not sure what country in Africa they went to. I think it was Kenya.
I think it was Kenya.
I'm not sure that anything beyond their visit and efforts to reconnaissance that whole effort developed. But I think with the relationship he had with Leon Sullivan is what helped spur his knowledge, the city's knowledge of our dad and the skills that he had in the architectural field.
Absolutely.
And you asked about other organizations he was involved with. I recall he was very thrilled to be involved with the Board of Presbyterian Hospital and Harcum College. He was pretty pleased to be involved with. There was a senior center that was built on Johnson Street that we went and did a dedication after he had passed. They recognized his involvement with helping them on a board level to have that place built. And he was Cliveden House.
Yeah,
is that the name of it?
House, yep.
The Cliveden House. So those were one of several board positions that he held. And I think his greatest achievement, even though it seems to have been pushed under the rug by that organization, and maybe not,
is
the Tribune.
That's where I thought he was going.
Yeah, the Philadelphia Tribune.
So he was on the board of the Philadelphia Tribune, and
Chairman of the board.
And he had been involved with the Tribune for many, many years. I remember he would take Margaret and I. I don't remember him taking Walt and Eddie, but he would take Margaret and I downtown whenever he had meetings. And how instrumental he was with helping the current publisher, Bob Ogle, moved from being advertising director to actually becoming the CEO of the organization. So he served on the board for many, many years.
That's the 17th and Fitzwater.
No, that's at 16th. 16th. Yeah, Fitzwater is the Clef Club.
Right.
But so I'm now on the board, but I think it's primarily because I worked with the New York Times regional newspaper group for about 20 years, and then I managed a leadership program at Northwestern for a nonprofit organization, the Robert C. Maynard, which was Mr. Maynard also owned the first daily black newspaper in Oakland, California. He and his wife, until they divorced. So I think it was just a natural kind of thing for me to go ahead and serve on the board.
Okay. So I know you did just ask about community involvement. So you just heard all of them talk about all the different projects and boards he was on. But as far as the community, he was the committee person. My dad and my mom were the committee people for this area, the 46th Ward. And every election, no matter how busy my dad was, he would work the polls. And I started working the polls with them. Then Eddie started working the polls. And as they got older and they realized it was just too demanding on them as far as their age, they asked, would Eddie and I run to be committee people in place of them, because they still wanted it to be Livingstons as committee people in this area. And of course, hands down, all the neighbors said absolutely. So as it stands now, Edward and myself are still the committee people for this area. And I also want to say, no matter how many boards again that he was on, he wanted to make sure his children were safe and engaged. And that's when he, with several other gentlemen, I can only remember Jim Cox, they formed the first integrated private swim club, and it's the University City Swim Club back in 1964. Jim Cox was member number 1. The Livingstons are still membership number 2, and they are now in the thousands as far as membership numbers. But he did that primarily because he wanted to make sure we had something to do in the summertime.
Someplace
safe to play and become active. And he never liked swimming. He almost had a near drowning situation as a child, but he wanted us to make sure we knew how to swim. And the swim club is still thriving to this day. As a matter of fact, Mary and I are now on the board for the University City Swim Club. So we take pride in carrying on the legacy that him and Jim Cox and about 7 other gentlemen started in this area.
And I'd like to add to that. I think there are a lot of reasons for Dad being involved in starting it, but especially with the location, it was all around a sense of community.
Right.
And even today, and not just a sense of community, but to have a place that was integrated back in 1964,
right,
for families to be able to convene to and get to know each other and to talk to each other under the auspice of diversity and community.
Well, I have to add, I hate to keep interjecting how things were, but
well,
our grandparents lived in Trevose,
right,
and Trevose, and we grew up going there. We pile us in the car and we go see grandmom and granddad. And right at Old Lincoln Highway and Somerton Road was a swim club called the Highway Swim Pool. And every time we went past there
to go to Trevose,
to go to our grandparents, and this is around the corner from them.
Yeah,
we would kind of marvel at that swim club, but we couldn't go there.
Right.
Couldn't go there. And again, I think his influence with the Redevelopment Authority, and knowing what he was trying to do, inner city, integrating a private swim club, caused him to find a figurehead like somebody like a Jim Cox, who also had a pretty good sized family, 6 children.
Right.
But the two of them worked like brothers to get that pool going, and it was for the reason that he just wanted some place for his kids,
Right.
And Dr. Cox wanted some place for his kids
Right.
to be able to swim locally, and Cox family lived right at 47th and Pine,
Right.
so everybody's in walking distance, and many of the board members and members, again, being integrated, just wanted the same thing. And it was great that everybody came together and made something like that happen.
Yeah, and that's a question that's always brought up at the board meeting,
Right.
because we want to make sure that the diversity is continuing on at the University City Swim Club.
I'd like to start. Maybe
Go-
we can all go
go
down,
ahead, yeah.
because I think we all have our own memories. I remember when we moved from 57th Street to here, as Margaret mentioned. It was primarily all white, and having a best friend, I always remember her. And all of a sudden, she was gone. But with the neighborhood changing, the neighborhood seemed to bring in large families. So a lot of African American families. And so a lot of good memories of how we would all play outside on Locust Street. We would play tops, we'd jump rope, we would play tag. We knew that if we got in trouble, even though there were no cell phones back in those days, because we would always sit down to dinner. Mom cooked dinner every single night, and we would all sit down as a family to eat.
Right.
I would just hope I would not be called out on something that I shouldn't have done that day.
We have
But more
neighbors
than
that
likely,
we
I
report.
was called out because it was like a drum roll.
It was a village.
It was like the village.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
no matter what any of us did on the block, all the parents were there to make sure that we were all held accountable. They wanted us to have a good time,
Right.
but they didn't want any of us
And
to get
they did get some phone calls
Yeah.
from neighbors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But one thing that we did that we would never allow our children to do is to play in the street. We used to throw the football through the trees. We used to play dead block, take the chalk and draw squares
In
Yeah.
the middle of the street.
And
Yeah, in
with
the
the
middle of the
street.
street. Or Farragut.
No, right here.
And on
Locust
Locust Street. Yeah.
Yes. I just remember
You could.
getting, almost
They
getting
just-
hit a lot of times running out in the street.
Well, they didn't fly down the street then.
Like they do now.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like Mary was saying, yes, there were a lot of large families. As time went on, I stayed on Locust Street. Eddie stayed on Locust Street. But the large families seemed to have dwindled. And then it was just small families moving in. There were hardly any more children on Locust Street.
We all grew up.
But now it's revolving. Now we see families beginning to move back on Locust Street with children. So we're happy about that because we want it to be a family block. That's how we know Locust Street as a family block. So it has been a change. It went from white to blacks, and now because of gentrification, it's really coming right back to all whites again. Yeah, because of the cost of what homes are in this area, very few blacks can really afford this area. I know my son was looking for a house. I would have loved for him to afford a house in the area, but he had to find a house outside of Philadelphia.
I think the one thing about University City, though, that I complain about, because I don't get the parking permit,
Yes.
but the West Loft is drawing so many people here
Yes.
with cars, and they have no parking yet. And it's development, and it's good development because it's such a large building that they're moving
It's
into.
a whole city block.
Yeah.
West Philly
Whole
High
city
was a
block.
whole city block.
And they are attracting the right type of folks that don't tear up. They seem to be respectful in the neighborhood, but they don't have any place to park either. So it is tough. I chuckled because
Yes.
when we moved out of 46 across the street, the two-story houses, my dad did rent to Penn students, and they can tear up a house. But
And I remember we had some parties over there too.
So I really wanted to move away, and I found a place on 47th Street. Margaret and I were going to move. I came home one day and I said, Dad, Margaret and I are going to move on 47th Street. He said, oh, no, you're not. You're moving right across the street. And yeah, we used to have some parties in that house. I don't think we damaged it.
Oh, no.
But we had a lot of parties, and I would like to tease because I would sort of figure out when Dad was going to come over and end the party. And so whenever I saw him coming across the street, that's when I would pretend I wasn't part of the party. And Margaret would get caught.
I would be the one in trouble for something that she started.
I remember in the neighborhood walking to church every Sunday. I remember working at the A&P supermarket and helping people bring their groceries from the store to their car, and we'd get a tip, and did a lot of that. 46th and Spruce.
No, that was, the A&P. That was A&P. That's right. 46 and Spruce.
Yeah. But there was also a
The Penn Fruit on 48th Street.
And there was also an Acme.
And there was an Acme on 48th. They were across from each other.
I remember there were a lot of young men in the neighborhood, many of which lived on the block, same age as I, and being young and wanting to be athletic, we could throw the football on Locust Street, in the street, but we would also get organized, and we bought helmets, we had shoulder pads, and we would go to West Philadelphia High School's field right at 48th and Spruce Street, and we would have organized rough touch or even tackle football. But we
play against other neighborhoods.
Yeah,
or there were enough of us that we could play against each other.
Yeah, too.
But even before then, we used Lee School's playground daily. They had basketball. We would play what's called stickball, where you use a broken broom handle, and a wiffle ball, which I'm not even sure they make anymore, or even half a wiffle ball, and you hit the ball toward the school, and if you hit the ball and hit the first floor windows, that's a single. Second floor windows was a double. Third level was a triple, and if you got it on a roof, that was a home run. And it almost sounds like we're breaking windows, but we weren't, because they were all caged in. But and then we played wall ball, where you slap the ball with your hand. So there was a lot of athleticism that we all went through. We did kickball, dodgeball, and we can still all remember the names of the families that grew up here with us, and many of them had 6 children like we did. Some were fewer, but we were all the same age, and this block was teeming with kids our age.
And we did a lot of walking, because my mom did not have a driver's license back then. So everywhere we went, we would have to shop or do anything in the community. We would have to get there on foot unless our dad would drive us. So we went to a lot of the stores on 52nd Street. We would do our shopping for our shoes there. What was that, Buster Brown?
No,
Shapiro. There was Hornet Hornets on 52nd Street. We would go there for dinner. So it wasn't until we were grown that our mom finally got her driver's license. But walking in the neighborhood was never a problem for us. It was just safe, and then that's how we did a lot of our. That's how we got to a lot of our stores. I remember even walking with Dad when he was involved with Berin Savings Bank. We would walk with him up to 52nd Street. So,
we'd eat at Father Divine.
And we would eat at Father Divine's on 36th Street.
Right.
Yeah.
We would walk to Clark Park pretty often.
Yeah.
And I remember them taking us to the museum on Saturdays to see
the Penn.
Penn
Museum.
Museum
Every Saturday morning.
every Saturday to see the free movies. And sometimes it was a treat to be able to go through the museum. We would get on a bus before she would put us on the L.
Growing up, we never really got on the L. It was always the bus.
Yeah.
Why is that?
I don't know.
Never even
We
thought
were
about
kids.
it.
We didn't ask. We just followed along with her. She would say, come on.
I guess it was less walking, but the 42 went from Spruce downtown.
Yeah.
And the D bus went from Walnut downtown.
Right.
But I think we more often caught the 42 because it was a block away.
I believe that the communities are developing a stronger and positive relationship with Penn, because now Penn is realizing in order for them to survive, they have to reach out to the community. And everyone knows about Penn Alexander. Now Penn, University of Penn, is now heavily involved with the Henry C. Lee School. And there's a great program out of Penn called the Netter Center, where they're going into the different schools and working with students, elementary and high school. I'm a strong advocate for Penn as well for the community, making sure that both are doing their share as far as connecting and doing what's best for the youth, what's best for the seniors, and how we can each work together on affordable housing whenever possible. Oh boy, that goes way back. Now, that's another organization that my parents were involved with. And I would go with him sometimes to the community meeting of Walnut Hill. And then after that, I moved away. But when I came back to Locust Street, I didn't think twice about not getting back involved with the community. So I would start going to the Walnut Hill community meetings when Betty Revis was president, Queen Hinton was president, Isaac Barber was president, and then Horace Patterson was president. So we're talking many, many years.
Oh, these are our neighbors.
Yeah, I was involved with Walnut Hill, and then that's when they asked would I become president of Walnut Hill. And that's where I am now. And with developers coming into this area, it's good to have that relationship with a strong Walnut Hill community so that we know we are working for the community as well as making sure the developers are doing what they can for our community. Oh no, we grew up there, which is now the Enterprise Center. But yeah, we grew up. We didn't. Did we?
I remember. I'll speak because
I didn't go to.
Okay, we were too young to go.
Yeah, but we knew of it.
But I do remember Dick Clark.
Yeah.
And Wee Willie Weber lived on Farragut Street. And I would remember them walking down Farragut to go to, because it was the TV station at the time. So I remember sneaking sometimes and keeping my distance and following them and standing in front of bandstand. But I must have been only 8 or 9 years old, but watching the dancers go into and just being awed at seeing that and seeing Dick Clark and Wee Willie.
I don't know why you don't remember, but we went, I think you girls were teenagers at the time. We went to the bandstand and we was waiting for our turn, well, the teenagers' turn. Then we got kicked out.
That was not through Dick Clark.
I thought that was High Lit.
That was High Lit.
Yeah.
Okay. So we used to go to the High Lit show and dance and be on TV. But it's that. And I do remember we used to go ice skating there too. There was ice skating ring there and it was open to the public. We used to go ice skating.
Then they had the roller derby.
Roller derby.
That's
what I went to. Roller derby.
Well, the roller derby sport.
Yeah. But it's now the Enterprise Center. And the Enterprise Center supports small businesses. here in the city of Philadelphia. I work for them part-time as their HR manager. Yeah, but I also support small businesses, and I think that was an influence that Dad had on me, being an entrepreneur, really. And you think about the fact that he raised 6 kids as an entrepreneur. I never really thought about it, but he never encouraged any of us to consider entrepreneurship. He always encouraged us go to college, get a good degree, get a good job working for someone else, not for yourself. And so when I sort of put all those pieces together when I was in my late 40s, early 50s, is when I decided to leave corporate America and step into this world of entrepreneurship as a consultant, though. But it really had me think about how can I support small businesses. So
you and me both.
Yeah.
All right, that's right.
Because I worked for the railroad, Conrail and Amtrak, and both of those corporations I managed or directed their supplier diversity program. And having a dad that was a small business owner was a big influence. And it allowed me to influence the corporations for some of the programs they did, like the National Minority Supplier Development Council had a business consortium fund. And I can remember our vice president, who I reported to, asking about whether or not Conrail should invest in it. And I explained to him that, my dad is an entrepreneur, which he knew. But I told him the difficulties he had with the banks and securing loans, and how important it was that there was such a mechanism through a private organization such as the NMSDC to provide funding to disadvantaged firms. And Conrail ended up investing a pretty sizable amount of money to that fund. And it was pretty much money that was loaned to the organization that was allowed for loans to small businesses.
And then I took it from a different approach, working for a nonprofit organization that supports small businesses by offering free mentoring and education to help especially aspiring small businesses be able to get the advice that they needed to be able to start and to grow their business.
I was a teacher for 35 years and at one school for 35 years. It was Sharswood School in South Philadelphia. And I just want to say that even though our parents had their own nick for doing things, they never forced anything on us, but they were just good role models. I don't want to leave our mom out because she was known on Locust Street for, I would say, beautification. Because everyone knew our mom as the person that would be up and down Locust Street sweeping, over by Henry C. Lee School sweeping, over by West Philadelphia High School sweeping, involved with the Home and School Association at the Henry C. Lee School when we were all there.
And she cooked dinner for us.
Yeah.
And every single night she would cook dinner for us. And
if we were outside playing, she had a way of letting us know it was time for dinner.
Yeah, I still have the bell.
You got the bell?
I still have the bell.
And we still all basically do exactly what we saw her doing without even thinking twice about it. If we see trash, we're outside sweeping. We're heavily involved with our schools in the neighborhood. None of our children go to that school, but we support the Henry C. Lee School. We're involved with the Allen Locke School. And so it's just something that just came natural for us to do. And I contribute that to our mom and our dad.
And if I could add about mom, people will still come up and say, I remember how your mom gave me this advice. Dad too. But we're talking about mom and how they remember the wonderful sandwiches that she would make and invite them into the house to have a sandwich if she felt they needed some food.
I remember she was up in age and she got dehydrated sitting on a porch.
I remember that.
Yeah.
And she went to the Presbyterian and there was a nurse in there and she kept looking at her.
Yeah.
She said, I know her from somewhere. And it turns out she used to drive down Locust Street to go to work and she put two and two together. she would always see her out there
Outside sweeping.
So that's where I know her from.
Yeah.
Well, when when West Philadelphia High School, at the end of the day, they get out, my mother was right there.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure the kids. And
Didn't fight.
I knew some, I would bump into, let's say if I go to YMCA or if I went to other places, and somebody said, yeah, they went to West Philly High, and they knew my mom, and they spoke highly of her.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Margaret, that was Margaret's vision.
Oh.
She should share that story.
Well, let's start back to when we all went to New York for the street renaming of our second cousin,
Mm-hmm.
Edwin Woodruff.
Mm-hmm.
He was the first Black FBI agent killed in the United States.
And
In
duty of
action.
action.
In
He was
action.
one of two.
And I was just at awe when we went there for the street renaming and all of the wonderful things that they said about him. Now, we were all young. We were young when this happened. It was in the 60s, wasn't it? If I'm not mistaken. But I came back and I said, wow, this is something we need to do for our mom and dad. And so at that time, Cheyney Blackwell was our city council person. So I reached out to Cheyney Blackwell and I said, we would like to name Locust Street Livingston Way, because not so much of the fact that our parents lived on Locust Street, but for all the things that they did throughout Philadelphia, my mom and dad. And she was totally on board right away. So that's when we got together as a family and we started meeting every month, having our meetings, putting together our testimony, the reason why we wanted to have Livingston Way named, Locust Street named Livingston Way, but then it had to come to a halt because of the pandemic. So we had to put everything on pause. But as soon as the pandemic lifted, at that time, Cheyney Blackwell was coming out of office and Jamie Gaultier was coming into office. So Jamie Gaultier continued on with the vision that we had to name Locust Street Livingston Way. And we had the ceremony on our dad's 100th birthday, May 21st.
Yeah.
And Cheyney Blackwell was a speaker. Jamie Gaultier was a speaker. Senator Vincent Hughes, because we never even spoke about how close our dad was with Vincent Hughes' father. They both worked, they were on the board at the Berin Savings Bank. So, and plus we grew up with Vincent Hughes. So Vincent Hughes spoke and Rick Kwadrowski spoke. Of course, Bob Bogle from the Philadelphia Tribune spoke. So many people. Joe Mulvihill, his partner. So many people wanted to be part of that ceremony that day, and we were trying to involve as many people as possible. Vernoka Michael, the first woman of boxing, we say, of Blue Horizon, but she spoke on behalf of our mom because she knew our mom very well. So that is a legacy that I'm so glad that we all worked on together, and it's something that will still be here after we're gone. Livingston Way.
And if I could add about Vernoka, Mom always wanted to be involved with the United Way in some form or fashion.
Right.
And she went to Vernoka to ask her, what can I do to become a board member of the United Way? And Vernoka was already, politically savvy. Right, because of her involvement with the Blue Horizon and a lot of the challenges that she had with that boxing ring. So the advice that she gave to Mom enabled Mom to be able to finally become a board member of the United Way.
And one of the advices was to go back to school and get your degree.
That was it.
And that was one of the main reasons why our mom went back and got her degree. It was because of Vernoka Michael telling her that. Yeah, we always say our parents were visions before their time. He just knew when he saw houses become available on Locust Street, he bought them and he wanted his children in it. But he always said he bought them for a reason, because when they got up in age, they wanted us to be close by to help take care of them.
But they would never share what their vision was. It was like they wanted us to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of things we're still putting the pieces together. Dad was a really humble man. He didn't put himself. I never saw him put himself in a position of, hey, I'm Walt Livingston.
No, he didn't.
He was always in the background doing what he did to be most effective.
He was always a balanced kind of guy. Just trying to create a balance. I heard him say that a number of times at meetings, just trying to create a balance.
Mm-hmm.
And I finally understood what he meant.
Yeah.
After you hear it a few times, and that's the way he lived.
Yeah.
That's my goal, Eddie.
Well, my daughter, she's given us ideas of what we can do to make sure that our houses stay within our plan. And I'm pretty sure Walter's children have done the same.
Yeah, and Mary?
And so we still own the house on 52nd Street. Right. But the family home is actually owned by our younger sister.
The one that lives in Texas.
The one who lives in Texas. And it's her wish that this home is used just for family. Mm-hmm. So we'll see what happens. I'm the oldest. I don't know what's going to happen. You never know.
And when we think about getting together, we always come here.
Right.
Yeah. Holidays.
Well, we're trying to make Walt part of Walt Man. Trying to take on some of that tradition too.
Which is right here on Locust Street as well.
Yeah. So no matter what, it's having Locust Street is the focal point for family.
Because they're both on the 3-story side. Eddie and I are we're lucky. We're on the 2-story side. So our houses aren't really big enough to house all of Mary's kids.
So, we do have to buy houses. And then our brother Joseph, he knows how to buy houses as well.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Every Thanksgiving and
Christmas.
Every Christmas, for sure.
Yeah.
I think Marlene is the only one that's really out of the area.
Yeah.
And your daughter, she's in Atlanta.
Yeah, but she's making plans to move up here. She's talking to Chop. So my daughter is back to go.
When I lived away, it was just over Lindbergh Boulevard, and that was only for a short period. So I wasn't far from Locust Street. I just tell everyone I lived on Locust Street my entire life, really.
And I lived in every single house, 4635 here and 4647 here for a moment. And Trevos.
That's right.
And Trevos.
Mary lived in Trevos, yeah.
Yeah, there's artists in the family. Ed and his daughter are the real artists.
Yeah.
Niall has art in the airport, around the city.
Right.
She's pretty well accomplished for a young lady.
Choice being in a station wagon, going from here all the way to New Mexico Games. We made a lot of stops. We explored caves.
Yeah.
We
Crystal
go fishing. We went to Yellowstone Park. So there were a lot
Took
of
pictures of bears and then they chased us back into the car.
Chase Dad
back in the car. He got back in the car just in
That
time.
was one of his hobbies, taking pictures.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
That was his hobby.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And he wanted to get out when we were heading over towards New Mexico for one of the Boy Scouts. He got out because he saw bears and he wanted to take a picture.
Yeah.
And there was all these other cars stopping to look. And all of a sudden the bear started coming towards him. And boy, did he run back to that car. We're all in the car, little kids just watching him.
And laughing.
And laughing.
We didn't know.
We didn't know the seriousness of it. Yeah.
But he also would take us camping.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that was pre-Boy Scouts. But I remember how scared I was when he would take us camping and putting us in under a tent and wondering, like, where's your rifle if a bear attacks us at night?
But he also rented those, we call it those,
Pop-ups.
Bunsen burners.
Yeah. No,
the rigs that you hook onto the hitch to the back of your car. And
It was a pop-up camper.
Yeah.
The pop-up camper. Yeah.
But they were sincerely nice people, and I have people that still tell us they knew our parents.
Had fond memories.
I had fond memories of them. Those that knew them well enough, and they were highly respected, which was nice. Even those guys that used to smoke their cigarettes, my friends. My dad would walk up to them, take the cigarette out of their mouth, put it on the ground, and stuff on it. It's not good for you. And no one would argue with him.
No. And you know what? None of us mentioned his involvement in joining the Union League and how unusual that was.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, yeah.
So sorry,
he was the first Democrat and African American to join.
I don't know if he was first African.
No, I don't know about the first, but Thatcher Longstrap sponsored him to join the Union League.
Yeah. They were on the board of Marine together.
And I just remember as little, we were young and we would go to the Union League. Sometimes we would go there for New Year's Day dinner or Thanksgiving, just different events. He would take us all to the Union League.
I remember he was inducted as a fellow in the American Institute of Architects.
That's right. Yeah.
He was a fellow.
Yeah.
FAIA.
And he got the Whitney Young Award. Yeah. I remember all of those
Urban
events that we went to for him. It was wonderful. I loved it.
Every
I loved it.
New Year's Day, he would take us down there.
I was
We'd have
gone. I
that.
wasn't part of that.
Yeah.
What was that punch? That vodka or something punch they would serve.
Yeah. In the summertime, the Lobster Fest dinner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember telling people, "Oh yeah, I'm a member of the Union League."
Yeah.
But I'm not me. It was Dad, but I would just say, "Yeah, I'm a member."
Yeah.
Spread the word about it.
No, I'm glad you're spreading the word about our parents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And University City, it's a great area to live in. And
Yes, it is.
I tell people where my family lives, and that area is hot right now.
Yes, it
is. It was great
Area's
growing
hot.
up, and it's still great.
Yeah.
I'm glad I'm back
Yeah.
home.
So somehow people know it's a great area.
Yeah.
If you ever watched The Little Rascals, that was us.
Yeah.
We were always doing
Yeah.
things, building go-karts, going out on a group bicycles to just all over the city.
I'd just like to thank you
Yeah.
for allowing us to talk about
Our
our
parents.
parents,
Mhm.
how they influenced us. I think we all turned out pretty good, even though there was, how's Mary going to turn out? Because I think I was pretty much
Rebel.
the rebel.
She's an Aquarius.
Well, I thought the rebel without a cause, but Dad was
right on, right?
Dad is a true patriot.
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
Yes, he
was.
Yeah.
And certainly a community involved kind
Yes.
of person.
And I think that's where I got that from. And Eddie. Yeah. Without
And
even
Mary.
thinking, we just
Yeah, and I do it from
Followed
the
suit.
perspective
Yeah.
of being involved with small businesses
Right.
and support.
Yeah.